So, hi everybody. I'm Robbie Lloyd again from the Justice and Peace Office, and here's my wonderful colleague Megan Moses.
Hello.
A very strong contributor to the Curious Grace Drop-In Centre model and project that we're wanting to encourage you to join. And one of the most important areas to create a warm and friendly drop-in centre is to have creativity on offer, something which can be spontaneous as well as planned. And so Megan has done a lot of work with our colleague Joelle Sassine on the sorts of issues to think about if you're a local community group, a parish, who are interested in opening the doors, putting on the urn for the coffee, and wondering what it is that you may be able to offer people who come in seeking a community of belonging, a warm, accepting place that values them for their very lived experience, but is also a place of fun and being able to share things with your new friends. So to that end, Megan's with me now, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the elements that you might like to think about in setting up a creative arm to your Curious Grace Drop-In Centre. And the first one would be a location, I think, Megan.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you very much for that introduction. So I guess obviously the location depends on what facilities you have available, and to a certain extent the location will determine what you can get involved in. Creativity is a very wide field. It's everything from what people traditionally think, which is, the drawing, painting, sculpting, and then it can also be putting on theatre or playing guitar or playing drums on buckets turned upside down. It's the whole thing with creativity. It's not just the activities that you might be offering, but how you yourself approach the whole experience. So location essentially is just wherever you're able to set up, keeping in mind, that music might have impacts on the neighbours. So, that might be more or less suitable in some spaces, and
be able to be messy if you're doing...
Exactly, messy, and things like having sinks to clean up after paint.
Any range of activities that where you roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty, have fun together. And so on the creative activities front, I think one of the questions people may have is, what sorts of things do vulnerable people like to do? If you're feeling sort of withdrawn, you've been maybe at home a lot and shy, and you haven't been mixing with other people, how do we gently provide activities that can be welcoming for those who haven't been out and about for a while?
That's probably the most important thing out of all of this, is that what matters more than the types of activities that are put on is the atmosphere that's established. So I guess I would definitely advise having a facilitator, because it's possible to, for instance, put some paints on a table and and people can of their own volition join in and paint. But I think having a facilitator, who doesn't have to be an art teacher or anything of that kind, but just someone who believes in the value of creativity, having someone there who will act as the face of the creative space, and who helps establish the atmosphere that is very welcoming and very gentle and no pressure. And I think I would make it myself, I would create a little leaflet for people so that they have some information that they can read by themselves ahead of coming to the creative space, so they kind of know what to expect. And the number one point on that I would put is, this is not about making good art. This is not about being, perfect. It's just about sitting in community with other people and connecting with yourself as you create, and connecting with other people in that process.
And I think that's where it's really great to have volunteers who themselves have already done some thinking about what they like doing, so they can be around just doing their own painting, making a little sculpture, having a go at an open mic event where they can show what it's like to get up and try to tell some stupid jokes or whatever. So that is a framing to get started. And then I think you've put some thought, Megan, into what sort of materials people might like to gather and have in the cupboards.
The great part about creativity is that you can use all sorts of materials. So it's not just the traditional things like, paints, crayons, papers, but anything, household items, bottle tops, buttons. Literally, it is a case of imagination. I would suggest going on Google and just Google creative ideas or creative activity ideas, and I promise you will be inundated. There will be more activities than you can hope to fit in. And in terms of gathering materials, a lot of people start art projects and craft projects and don't quite finish them, and may have these cupboards full of attempted art projects that didn't quite go to completion. So asking parishioners for donations. Even I would contact places like Officeworks or Spotlight and see if they would like to donate. But really anything at all that you can imagine.
Yeah, and of course the wonderful reverse garbage at Addison Road.
Yes, that's
Community
brilliant.
Centre in Marrickville, industrial discards recycled for incredibly creative purposes. They've been a driving force behind Mardi Gras for decades. So then we come to the people in the space, or the face of the space, and this is where you really are inviting fun. And we want cross-generational, cross-cultural difference, and diversity is the richest source of creative expression. And so we want all ages and all stages to feel welcome. And often people will bring incredible skills, like a lot of older people may be really fabulous at knitting and crochet and even basket weaving, which used to be a sort of a put-down term for crafty activities. It's actually fabulous and a great thing to do to make new creative shapes in a sculptural sense. I know my wife is a psychotherapist, but she's also a sculptor by passion. She just loves nothing more than to make new shapes and experiment with form. And
it's tactile. Sculpting in particular is very tactile. And I think it's, with a lot of people who say come from difficult backgrounds, a lot of the time there's disconnection between the mind and the body, disembodiment, disassociation. So playing around with your hands in tactile things like clay or even mushy stuff, it's fun. It's reconnecting with that inner child and Beautiful. Returning to your body.
Exactly. And that leads us into talking about the participants. So once you've opened the doors of your Curious Grace Drop-In Centre and you've spread the word in your own, if it's a parish, in a congregation, but hopefully with all your neighbouring groups in the community, the general community, down at the shops, in the other faith groups, in the community centre locally. You want people to know that you've got a new fun and funky area where people are welcome. And I think the idea is, number one, have your space ready and your materials ready and your volunteers ready, but then also be ready to welcome people without rushing them. You want them to just be able to come in and quietly find a spot they're comfortable with, have a cup of tea, maybe have no expectation of people when they first come, just that they're welcome, and don't try to make people do anything. But by having volunteers who are doing some stuff themselves, people will naturally be curious and come and think about whether they might like to join in.
But it develops a momentum, and I think an important point to remember is that this project, this fun space, it will evolve with time. So it's not a case of having everything ready and prepared and having lesson plans from the get-go. That's not what this is about. This is about creatively evolving and developing this space and this project without putting any pressure on yourselves as facilitators or volunteers to make it be something, or pressure on any of the participants. And the other thing that is important to add, probably because this has been so much my own personal experience, is punctuality. So people from difficult backgrounds, I'll just use that term, may have issues with punctuality for all sorts of reasons, but one of them being ambivalence, so fear. So on the one hand, they want to participate, but on the other hand, coming out of, mostly being isolated at home, having doubts about their own creative abilities, all that stuff that goes on in our heads. And it's like a seesaw. I want to go, I want to connect with people, but I'm also terrified. And sometimes how that manifests is people turning up late, sometimes 5 minutes before the allotted time ends. And while it's important to start the group at the same time, if there's going to be like a schedule, it's important to not make a fuss about the punctuality. Yeah. I used to have terrible, and still sometimes do, terrible troubles with punctuality, and the amount of shame that comes with that is dreadful. And I still remember people's kindness. So, yeah.
And that's part of our expression we have used already many times in this journey, the Bahasa Indonesian word menunjungi, keep coming back. We want to keep coming back to the space of welcome. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes before closing time. If people come in then, stay open. Keep the space warm and welcoming. And I think if you, like I sometimes do, you run out of ideas, there's always Dr. Google. And as my wife is teaching me more and more, if you don't know how to do it, YouTube it.
Yes.
There's a YouTube explanatory video for everything under the sun. So we want to invite you to have fun. We will be here to provide further advice, and we've got a wonderful flyer that Megan and Joelle have developed for your information. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we welcome you into the Curious Grace Drop-In Centre creative world. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you very much, Robbie.